saw, I don't remember, what's your name?
My name? Elizabeth.
Elizabeth. She noticed up here that I had some books set aside that have been, quote, banned in the past. So I kind of wanted to talk to you a little bit today about what is a banned book, what's a challenge book. So in order to do that, we have a couple of terms we really need to talk about. Does anybody know what intellectual freedom is? Anybody have a thought of what it might be?
Maybe the freedom to like think.
Okay, yeah, close. Getting on the right track?
To be able to learn what you want to.
Sure, absolutely. You have thought? So, this is true. The definition is kind of like you have the freedom to read and understand what you're reading and be able to make opinions based on what you read and what you think. And so that's an important concept. The other word is censorship. Have you ever heard censorship? Have said something's been censored before?
Yes.
What does that mean?
To hide it or like I don't know the word.
You're not allowed.
Yeah. Remove.
Yeah, remove. Basically, censorship is when they're removing something, you're not allowed to see it, you're not allowed to read it, you're not allowed to watch it, you're not allowed to interact with it, and it can apply to a lot of things. It can apply to books, it can apply to magazines, to music. Has anybody ever your parents you know what, I really don't want you reading that? Or, ooh, I really wouldn't like for you to listen to that music. Anybody? A little bit, yeah. I saw Josh with a nod back there. So there's different types of censorships. There's some that are would it be imposed on all of us? Then there are some that your parents kind of have a little bit of responsibility to see if they want you to read or listen to something, and they get to decide sometimes that for you, while hopefully educating you on how to think for yourself and choose. Okay, so I have a list of books here. A few of them out here on the table. What do you think these have in common?
They're all been banned.
They've either been banned or challenged, correct? Any of those titles surprise you?
Yes.
Harry Potter.
Oh my God.
I didn't even see that.
So what do you mean by challenge?
Ooh, that's
It
a
means
very
whenever they went to court in order to try and ban the book in the public library or at school.
exactly, yeah, very good. In fact, there's your definition. So
Why
a
does
challenge
Winnie the
book
Pooh
means
up
that
there?
someone didn't like something in the book, and they went and they protested it, sometimes to a librarian, sometimes to other people, and they would have to fill out a form and have a discussion to see where it went from there. So that's a challenge. A banned book is when it's completely been removed from the shelf, that you can't access it. So the difference between the banned and the challenge.
Show us the book.
What? You have a question? Yes.
What do you mean was banned the challenge?
Oh. Because the challenge will come first, and then it'll be banned.
Well,
It was banned in different cities, so yes. We have not experienced it here, so no. All right, so let's talk about why books are banned or challenged. Yes. Okay. So the first one is good intentions and the desire to protect children. Okay? Imagine if you're reading a book and you're in second grade. And it's a book that might be something appropriate for 5th or 6th grade level. Okay, that would be an example of what would be a good intention. Maybe the person reading or looking at the book's oh, I don't know, this has got some information that maybe they're just not ready to handle. That could be good intention. They've got the best intention of, taking sure, just kind of, I guess, protecting, whoever they might want not to be reading. The other is to suppress conflicting ideas. That's the one that's the hardest. It's when you just want to say, no, we don't need to be reading about this topic. That's a suppression. Then the other ones is that sometimes people are just scared about other thoughts. Anybody been you've got a different belief than another person, and sometimes maybe there's a little bit of fear that if you share that belief, that it might cause some conflict?
illegal.
And then the last one, which I feel is probably the one most often used, is whether or not the book is appropriate for certain age, or if it's appropriate for, a school level. So for example, if you had, let's just do, if we had Gutless here. Okay, would you think that a book like this thick and stuff, might be in an elementary library?
Oh, no.
It could be dependent about the content.
It probably is.
Yeah. Could be about the topic, but sometimes, probably those younger elementaries aren't gonna be reading at this level yet, right? Yeah, so sometimes it's also about the appropriateness of it. As you can see here, I've kinda got a little photo of some of the, most common different, topics that are often challenged. So, here are the top reasons. Take a look. Number one is offensive language. Number two, it could be the sexual content. Or, like we just said, is it suitable for a certain age group?
That sounds right.
Yeah. Look at the other objections right here.
Wait.
Okay, that, what is,
Okay,
Like,
can we raise our hands? Yes.
like homosexuality, like people being gay, or like people being homophobic.
Either.
Both.
Anything to do with the topic. Anything to do with the topic. Okay? Yes.
What does this mean by anti-family?
Maybe it means like,
But then that's a dumb reason to.
I think they're going more towards making divorce okay.
yeah.
That's not right.
The king.
that's one of the topics, or, maybe could be talking about like if you were like going to estrange yourself for some reason or another, being anti-family, not wanting a family. Okay, what else up there?
They're gonna see that racism is bad,
Portrayal
but being
of
gay wasn't.
Marxism?
Okay, do we know what Marxism is?
Soviet Union.
What is it?
No,
Yeah. Yeah, it's a form of communism, a political view that, okay? Anything else up there strike you? Yes, but they could, well, there are other forms, think about it,
Picture club.
they can describe it,
Like 50 Shades of Grey.
they could put it in a magazine or an illustration in the book.
Wouldn't that be sexual content?
So, yes, there are 3 different ways, yes.
Don't they feel like an influence? Like when you check it out in the library, they're like, oh.
That's a very hot topic right now, because there are some that would like to do that, just like you would with movie or music. You could have given the book a rating, but then we're talking about full censorship at that point. We're censoring those books only to certain levels, or certain ages. So that is a thing where most librarians say, you're censoring what we're able to have available, because the book should be available to everyone.
Maybe should the parents say yes or something?
Well, that would be probably a conversation between a parent and the child, right?
Right.
Because they can decide if they wanted to purchase that book, or, if it wasn't available. Yeah. So there are a couple of different ways that challenges can happen, because you have to do a challenge before you can, have a book banned. And there are public challenges, and then and that means that basically they've gone to the news. The media is making something public to help create a challenge, or they're trying to back up a challenge. The reported challenges are the ones that they actually track. There's actually statistics on how many have been reported in the past, how many are currently reported. You see right here, our information goes back to 2017, because that's the latest data, is that there were 354 challenges in 2017. But it's interesting, because I think it's interesting, going back to 1995, or actually 1990, there were 762 challenges. So now we're in the 300s. Why do you think that's changed? Why is there a decrease? Either one. What do you think?
I was gonna say, because like a lot of people are more open to things like homosexuality and religion and all that.
Okay, so we're more open to ideas. What else? Anybody have another thought? Okay, yeah, I think that's on the right track. We're a little bit more open, a little bit more sensitive to different topics. So the challenges have come down. The other issue is, are they actually getting reported? You know, do people report them? Or do they just like ignore it?
Maybe they don't.
But if you notice, the biggest part of the triangle is right here. It says 82 to 97% of the challenges remain unreported. So that means someone might complain about it. Might complain about it with their friends at lunch. Might come up to the school and complain about it, but they never go any further with it. So it's never really reported. Yes, ma'am.
What is a disinvited speaker?
They wanted to speak because
Oh.
they just wanted to. Where does it say that?
Oh, okay.
Four challenges.
Says includes non-books, databases, displays, disinvited speakers. So we've had a couple instances over the last few years that maybe a governor was invited to speak at a college graduation, and then they were uninvited because people there started either protesting or saying, you know, we don't agree with their political policies, and so then they are no longer allowed to speak. Hey, good question. Any other questions right now? All right. So, who actually initiates the challenges? I find this slide a little interesting. As you can see, the largest challenging group is patrons. Who would that be?
Donators.
Yeah,
The people that check out the books, right?
Right.
Okay, so that would be your patron. Then the next highest group would be parents challenging books, because something's come home from either a class or you've checked it out from the library and they're looking at it going, huh, I don't know if I should have you reading that or not. What do you think about these other statistics? Is there anything there that you find interesting?
Only 1% of students actually report or challenge the book.
Why do you think?
Yeah, because they think that they're mature enough and like, they probably are.
Cause I'm sure a lot of them just don't care.
Okay.
Yeah, and then like parents just like are obsessed with like dating, you know, just like to the point where they don't let their child grow individually.
Okay.
Yeah, that's like the same thing with video games. They talk about how like all those violent
Makes you
video games.
violence and all
Okay,
that.
well, that's different, but
It's like the same thing with like
Like-
books. They think that if you get like read something about that, then you're probably gonna like, I don't know, turn crazy.
Fill your head with thoughts.
So if you think about that, that thought right there, fill your head with thoughts. Did you know back in World War II, which is when we had Hitler, right?
Oh, those.
That he actually gathered books and they burned them. They totally destroyed them because he didn't want people to have the ability to think for themselves or read and form opinions. So a lot of the books were burned if he didn't approve of them at all.
Jesus said just the Jewish books. It wasn't just Jewish books.
I never said just
What'd you say?
Jewish. I said, well, there were some Jews. I never said just.
Oh, okay. Yeah, no, he burned like all the books that had anything that didn't agree with him.
So
Right.
I'm grateful that we're not at a point where our books are like being carted off and burned. Luckily here, we have a nice library that's full of books that you can have a choice of reading. Okay, I'm gonna show you a couple of examples. I mean, here we have these on the table, and we're gonna do something with those in a few minutes. But, I found this fact that Harry Potter has been challenged at least 3 times since 2001, and it's made the #1 spot at least twice. And the reason they talk about anti-family, and I guess in that, think about it family-wise, you know, Harry,
Doesn't like his
cousin, his aunt and uncle, they really didn't kind of want him, or he was not gonna stay with them, so that's part of it. There are people that challenged it for it possibly being an occult, satanic, the magical aspects of it, okay? And then, of course, the religious viewpoint, and it does have violence. But Harry Potter is a classic story of what?
magic, which is
The hero saves the day.
Kinda, yeah. We got the good versus the evil, right? Yeah, that's one of the main themes. So I actually have a family member that would not let her kids read this when they were younger. I know that they were probably middle school late elementary when the series was starting to come out. And based on religious views, she refused to have them, wouldn't let them read them, and to this day, my cousins have never read the Harry Potter series, even though I had read it all, and I'm like, it's okay, it's a good series, please, let them read them. To the point that I don't even know that they've even seen the movies, and of course, they're now adults and everything, and can have the choice to read what they want. But it was just interesting that actually happened within my family. Now, is that censorship that would affect other people? No, but she had the right to do that with her kids. And is there a book or anything that you've ever had, like, your parents say, you know what, I think you need to return that one?
No. Yeah, I don't like. Oh my god, if you read about wizards, you're obviously so ghosts are sacrificing goats.
Don't be proud of me if I even.
Yeah, my friends would be like telling me to get like more mature, like
So I can form my own opinion.
Okay. Hey, there's nothing wrong with a little bit of cat every now and then. What about this book?
Are you joking?
Oh,
It's
really who's actually
I'm not joking.
Oh, it's a boy. It's a boy, and then who is
What?
and then Peter the Tiger has
Oh, I have never heard this concept, Samantha, but that's good. But no, Winnie the Pooh was actually challenged because because they were talking animals, and that's not the first book. We had Animal Farm, which y'all probably don't know. It's kind of a classic in that little. But Charlotte's Web. How many of you read Charlotte's Web as a kid? Another situation where they were talking animals. Unrealistic. People didn't want. What? What?
like, you know how the other one
Talking
was
animals?
a conversation?
You think? Yeah, it's probably an appropriateness for the age, and then sometimes it's just maybe things are a little unrealistic because you have a lot of fantasy books that sometimes aren't believable. Yes.
I don't think that makes much sense, because like, for example, I guess like my father, so like, I grew up thinking the Animal Craft talking was cool and all that, and for example, like there's places out there, and if it was like, not like animals, but like, it would be like cool just like Iron Man saying they're the Avengers, and it's just makes the kids happy. It's kind of the same deal with like Winnie the Pooh, just like kids happy.
Well, is it any different than you talking to your pet? I have a dog. I talk to my dog like it's almost a real person.
Bark, bark, bark.
So to me, it's very similar. Here is one that is a little bit more recent. Has anybody read this book yet?
Yeah.
Okay, I bought it a couple weeks ago, so I've got it set aside to read in the next few weeks. But this actually happened in Texas. This happened in Katy, Texas, which is close to Houston area. That they challenged it and they pulled it off the shelf. And what?
Oh, yeah,
We had like a poster. We have a poster of it.
Yeah, we have a poster of it.
because
There were one main reason that they felt that it was very excessive, offensive language in the book. That was one of the biggest complaints when they were challenging it. And you see here, the author actually tweeted out, it said, "I'm saddened to hear that a school district in Texas banned The Hate U Give, but I'm also empowered. You're basically telling the kids of the Garden Heights of the world that their story shouldn't be told. Well, I'm going to tell them even louder. Thanks for igniting the fire." And as I was doing my research over the last few weeks, I see that to be a common thread with the authors. You challenge them, they're just going to write more to make along that line where, you know what, if they don't like it, let me do another one. Yes,
You said it was offensive language, right?
that's one of the topics, yes.
Like, it feels like another school that makes sense, but like,
like middle school.
Like you mature as you get older.
You do.
I mean, obviously, like, we don't really, if someone says it, we might take it as a joke, but like, really, we don't even care if someone says bad words.
Like if it's books like swearing.
But do you think that some people are offended by bad language?
I mean,
Are bothered by it?
I feel like it's really the
Then don't read it.
that like affect
Maybe
them.
they should have stickers, maybe like warning. Offensive notice. So
Well,
people that are little.
Well, how did they find out about that? That's a good thing, because we talked about that earlier. You said, could there be, stickers or something? But there is a way to figure it out. Like, if a parent's concerned about the book, there are a lot of online reviews about the books that can kind of describe a little bit more about what's in the book, maybe some pros and cons. Oftentimes you have to be careful because most of the time they're coming out in the pros of the book, okay, because everybody wants to make sure that it's a feel good. And oftentimes books are driven by what? What do you think? What do you think books are driven by? Money. Yeah, the publishers are going, is this book going to make us some money? That's one of the things that they're going to do when they're trying to create one.
Why don't they just what's it called? Sell like censored versions, or, like the bad words. They just change it like.
Oh,
on the
like how we
radio.
do.
no, like hands.
Well, unfortunately, that would still be censoring the author's original work. So even if they do what we'd call a retraction or redaction, then that would still be a form of censorship to the author. Okay, so good. This is just showing you some of the top banned books in school, kind of from the start of banning. I don't even know these two, but to be honest, I haven't
Hey,
ever.
Dad!
Okay, but here you see again,
Oh, okay.
now Harry Potter, the Twilight series, and then even Romeo and Juliet. Why do you think Romeo and Juliet would have been banned?
Suicide.
Yeah. They actually thought in South Carolina that Romeo and Juliet was too mature for middle school students. What do you think? Do you think that can happen, that it's too mature?
It's like,
It's supposed to be for like girls.
I mean, it's like fine,
Yes.
I messed up.
Why would they ban Twilight? Like because of the
They, in this statistic, this was actually in a primary school. Partly, Twilight has been banned for the sexual content of the book. The violence is one of the number one aspects. Yeah.
But why do you have elementary school?
What?
Why is it elementary?
I don't know. That's a good question because really the books are at the discretion of usually the librarian or even a committee of people in the school. So,
wait, the librarian could just like take away a book if she wants.
no. Oh, no. That's not what I was saying. She was asking how they get into elementary, and apparently maybe that location, the library thought, oh, it's okay, let me put it on a shelf. When maybe it needed to be researched further for that age group. Look at these. Other ones that have been found.
What?
Dr. Seuss.
Only five.
There's a Bible in every Bible.
There is a Bible. Well, if you want to know the truth, going back to about 1800, a little bit earlier, the Bible is actually considered to be one of the first books ever challenged. Part of it is that there were people that so believed that it needed to be in Latin, and that was the only language it ever needed to be translated to. Now, obviously, we know that it's translated in so many more languages now, so that it's accessible to everyone. But that was the main reason that one was actually challenged. What about Dr. Seuss? Haven't we all read Dr. Seuss?
Yes.
Why do you think he was banned?
The same.
Because the animal talkable? Or is it like,
No. Actually, this one was coming out at a time when there were some political views on Marxism, and that people were accusing Dr. Seuss of being, trying to indoctrinate political views, even though it's a book, a cute little book about green eggs and ham and, all of his other little creatures. Hunger Games would go about what? Yeah, a lot of violence, even though we all enjoy the series. What about The Fault in Our Stars, John Green's book? Yeah, sexual content would be in that one, yeah.
The chick that was like dying.
So, I put this graphic in because I wanted you to see that books can actually have more than one target. Like, just one theme, like you're seeing over here. Chocolate board, got 3 or 4 darts, and there's, each dart represents something else, like the different topics that that people would ban about. I have given this to Ms. Martinez, so if you ever want to go in and look at this a little closer, you can look at that hopefully in your Google Classroom. But here is the list of the books for 2017. Now, the latest list for 2018 comes out April 8th. I am very interested to see what books are going to end up on the list, because what we're seeing, some of these books have been on there for years. Like, they're constantly ending up on the top 10 list. Have y'all read 13 Reasons Why, anybody?
No.
No? Watch the show? What about The Absolutely True Diary of a Part-Time Indian?
I've never heard of that.
No? Okay. Drama?
Nope.
Okay. The Kite Runner? But you haven't read it? Okay. George? Sex is a Funny Word?
Yes, I read that, just for the pure fact.
Ah. How did you learn about challenges? I'm kind of interested.
I think I love making videos, and the main thing was like how kids are being denied their First Amendment rights, and I read a whole video about it, and I was like, wow, they're really like, that's what I checked out to go on. This is my
Did you like it?
Yeah, it's a good one.
So why do you know why To Kill a Mockingbird was challenged?
N-word.
Okay.
And
Yeah.
with
That
the hard
is
R.
that is
the
my
hard
story.
hard R.
What? I heard it. Who said it? Huckleberry. Yeah. Yeah, it was banned for the same reason as To Kill a Mockingbird. Alright. So, the first reported challenges and bans started in 1982. And so, we're up to over 11,300 books that have been challenged. And that number just keeps growing if you think that every year we have about 350 that are challenged. So, this number will just continue to grow. Do you think, here's my question for you. Do you think people challenging books and ideas is a bad thing?
Yes.
Yeah. Well,
Not
because on
necessarily.
one level,
Hey,
Okay.
let's do this. Can you give me a thumbs up if you think it's bad?
For what? Absolutely.
if you say it again.
Okay, do you think that people challenging books is a bad thing?
Can I say my?
Okay, yeah, I see a little bit of this, a couple of this. Do you think that challenges create dialogues?
Yes.
And isn't that what we need to be having today? And a lot of our way is having dialogues about what's happening? Yeah, I think having conversations is always a good thing.
We don't wanna have a bad conversation all the time.
Thank you, Ms. for not censoring any of our, well, not all of our books. You probably censored some in the cut, but we don't even know about it.
Okay, so what we're gonna do, we have a quick activity. You're gonna get to work with your person at your table. I'm gonna hand you a book. You're each gonna get a form. I want you to research or think why the book might be challenged or banned. Write it on your form. We're gonna share out so that when you leave, you'll have a list of some of the books that have been banned or challenged in the past. And we can just have a little bit more discussion. Some of these we've gone over. This might be a time when someone might need a device or one of your Chromebooks out so that you can.
Alice in Wonder.
Is the link on your slide?
Yes.
So, listen to what I'm saying. One person from each group can go get a Chromebook so that you can get to the link.
The link is right here. This is where a lot of information about banned books is at. Is is an organization called the American Library Association, so www.ala.org. Click on advocacy, click on banned books, and you can basically Google. Yes.
Do they challenge or ban the outsiders?
Oh, I can hand you books.
All I think is that
It's hard. Okay, we're smart. You hear, yeah.
I know what to do. Talking animals, drugs. Yeah, eating meat, I get big.
If we've already done a book or talked about it, and you see another one on the list that you want to complete, that is fine.
Yes, this is dope. Dope sick.
You're not allowed to walk.
Alright guys, get in classroom.
Too late, miss.
You do it. I'll tell you more about it. My Chromebook's dead. My Chromebook's dead.
13 reasons why isn't it?
What did you do at the end? What did you say?
Because like, if you think about it, if you have a third grade area,
No, it's your part.
like imagine
Everyone, what is Andrew Coyle?
separate out your time, it's hard for
Oh, yeah.
Okay, you have about 3 or 4 minutes to finish up, and then we need to share out.
We didn't get a book from us.
I didn't give you a book.
Okay, you got 4 guys in general, why people.
Would you do,
No.
What is that?
I went to the start.
do Captain Underpants, or Alice in Wonderland. Do one of those. Yes, do your book, and then everybody else will share, and you can fill in the rest. So do Alice in Wonderland or Captain Underpants.
Read it, the whole book. Oh my god. The whole book. Don't hit me. No, I don't know.
They have microphones, they can hear everything.
Yeah, I know.
So, yes, the camera's on, and the mic's on, and they can hear our conversation right now.
Oh, okay. I just didn't know if that stuff was on. What's this for again? Or do we not need it?
Don't, we're able to get online.
It says,
Suicide.
he said, offer healing.
Suicide.
Yeah.
Are y'all able to get on? Y'all are, some people are having trouble with Wi-Fi.
Said Miss
Oh, no, we're on.
Okay, go ahead. Do it quick.
Suicide.
We'll finish up.
Suicide. Suicide is great. Should let me write. I have that. Don't point it towards me. Suicide. This isn't Alice in Wonderland. That's 13 reasons why. Stop.
Oh god, he drugged the kids.
I could go down my face.
Yeah, it's a China
What is that one?
Wait, do we need this?
Hey, 1 minute, then we're gonna share our answers.
Suicide.
Alan, I don't know, ask her.
What else? What else? Suicide. Sexual.
Miss?
What's up?
Yes.
Yes.
Miss, does she, have you watched 13 Reasons Why? You watched 13
Okay, we
Reasons Why,
have
haven't
30
you?
seconds.
Watched it. Is there sexy? I mean, not sexy. Is there sex
30 seconds.
Yes, there's reading. Okay. Is this?
He said it, not me. So I don't have one. I think the pencil.
Says we got 30 seconds, but it hasn't even started working.
Yours. Other people's has.
Go.
It's a bad word.
Go.
Miss Pedigo?
Yes.
Where's our other?
You have,
Wait a minute.
Miss, where is our
What
other
they
book?
have here.
What?
Where is our other book?
What other book?
We only have one book.
You can look
Everyone else
by,
did 10.
you know,
Those are their books.
like top 10 list.
Everybody got one book.
And you just kind of see it, or you can do it in their Google search. That's where it's all unloading.
Why was everyone so? Why didn't everyone watch this last year? They're lame.
Okay, I want you to be able to have time to check out books and do whatever else you need to do. So, let's start. You guys, were y'all doing Alice in Wonderland?
Yeah.
Hey, it possibly could. What would be another thing?
I'm switching it up, but.
Oh, the animal talk.
Yeah, talking
I
animals
think it's
is
really
another
good
one.
with jokes.
Who had the Fault in Our Stars? That's at the back table, right? What did you, do y'all know what that one's about?
We said sexual content.
Okay, it does have sexual content. What else? Anybody else? Crude language is another one. If you want to fill these in as you're going along, it's perfectly fine. But they also have, in that one of the arguments was that it was talking about teens dying with cancer. But that's kind of a subject we have to talk about sometimes.
People need to know about that.
Okay? Does anybody do Captain Underpants?
Wait, so it was bad that we know about cancer?
I think it was just the way that they were telling it. It's not a bad thing. That was just one of the things I didn't know if the topic was appropriate for younger and different level age groups. Charlotte as well, we talked about was talking animals. Who had Al Capone does my shirts? What do you think? What was the answer? Alright, what? Yeah, it's negative, but what was Al Capone?
A
A
gang
gangster.
leader.
So it was kind of giving like people basically saying, hey, isn't a gangster being cool? That's kind of what was happening. Gutless was back over here.
Bullying and suicide.
Okay. The main reason was actually a sexual content that that in the book it actually describes part of the body that was very descriptive, they thought. So that was one of the things for Gutless. You had Dope Sick.
Dope sick.
Anybody have that one?
What in there?
Okay. Okay. And you guys had Speak,
Yes. Soft pornography, sexual content. That's kind of about it.
right? And we didn't have the Outsiders out, did
I
we?
know why.
Yeah.
The broken family, drugs, and then gangs.
Yes, the Outsiders had gang and violence for sure. Who had 13 Reasons Why? Did anybody have that one? No.
Oh,
What
what?
did you have?
Miss, we have 13 Reasons Why.
Kill a Mockingbird, which is what?
Language corruption, violence.
Okay. And you guys had 13 Reasons Why?
Yeah.
So,
Suicide.
okay, discussing suicide.
Yeah.
Right. Hey, I really thank you guys for the discussion today. You are very, you have some knowledge that I didn't know that you would have. And anyway, if you ever have any questions, in the Google Slides that's in your classroom, I did put a video that you can watch. You can also see that on April 8th, the latest band list will come out, and you can look that up at the ALA website that I gave you. Okay? All right. Thank you.
Gracias.
Hey, yes, you can